Welcome to my Ruby Slippers. I'm Lily Strong from the blog Lily Strong, and my purpose here is to help you along your own yellow brick journey as you try to heal from abuse or misuse or cruelty. We are stronger when we are working together. And today I'm talking about a question that so many people ask when they are in the middle of an emotional confusion, and that is, how do you know what this is? Especially with gaslighting. How do you know you're being gaslit? It's not, how do you know that someone disagrees with you? How do you know that communication is bad? How do you know you had a misunderstanding? It's harder than that. It's so much more manipulative, and it's hard to put your finger on it and say, hey, this person is gaslighting me on purpose. And that's because gaslighting has a way of making you mistrust your own mind before you even realize that is what is happening. And that's why it's so harmful. It doesn't just hurt your feelings. It's not just creating conflict. It literally is slowly training you to stand in front of yourself and ask, wait, am I the problem here? Maybe I don't remember it right. Am I too emotional? Oh my gosh, I hate it when I feel that way. I'm sure you've all thought those same things at one point in time or another. So I want today to feel a little different. I don't want you to just be passively listening to me while I'm talking about gaslighting. I want you to kind of try to put yourself into the experience. So throughout this episode, I'm going to pause and ask you questions. I'm going to give you some small reflection exercises. I'm going to invite you to notice how your body feels, what your thoughts do, and what happens when someone keeps handing you your reality back all twisted up. This is not a test. There is no grade. You don't have to prove anything. I'm just hoping it'll help you get a little closer to your own truth. So if you're in a place where you can, grab a journal or open a notes app or just listen and answer in your head. There is no wrong way. And before we go any farther, I want to say this clearly. If you're confused, that does not mean you are foolish. If you second guess yourself, that does not mean there is anything wrong with you or that you're broken. Confusion is not your failure. Confusion is a state. Somebody is trying to make you distrust your own reality. Let's start right there. So take a breath in and let it out. Maybe unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders a little and wiggle them. Put both feet on the floor if that feels good. Find a person that you think you want to know if they're gaslighting you. And ask yourself this question. Do I feel more clear around this person? Or do I feel more confused? Just start there. Not what they mean, not what they claim their intentions are, not what you hope is true, but what really happens to your clarity when you are around them. Pause there for a second, because one of the biggest clues of gaslighting is not just the content of the conversation, it's the aftermath. You walk in knowing what happened, but you walk away feeling very foggy about the situation. Or you walk in with what you think is a reasonable concern and you walk out apologizing for having feelings at all. These shifts matter because gaslighting is not just lying. People do lie, and that is bad enough. Gaslighting is more than that. Gaslighting is when someone manipulates your perception of reality so that you begin to question your memory, your instincts, your reactions, your judgment, even your sanity. And it makes me so sad to even say that because I feel it in my body as I'm talking about it. There are so many times that I have turned around and said, oh, I guess I'm remembering it wrong. Or, well, I am a woman, I'm probably too sensitive. Or, he's just joking. Why do I always overreact? I find these things, when you hear yourself saying it, that's like one of the number one things you should do is just stop and think about the words you are saying to yourself. I never said that. Okay, stop and think. Did they say that? If you know that they said that, stick by your memory. One of the things I hate the most is when he would say, everyone else agrees with me. You know what? That's not true. I'm calling bullshit on that one. Now, any one sentence by itself can happen in a tense moment. People get defensive. People say dumb things. People communicate badly. But gaslighting is a pattern. It's a pattern of making you distrust yourself while they are taking control. Not every disagreement is gaslighting. Not every forgotten detail is gaslighting. Not every argument is gaslighting. Sometimes people just remember things differently. But when one person consistently gets to be the narrator, the judge, the historian, and the expert on your feelings, that is a problem. And when the result is that you feel smaller, hesitant, more apologetic, more dependent, and less sure of yourself, well, that's an even bigger problem. So let's do our first simple exercise, the confusion check. Think of a recent conversation with a person you suspect might be gaslighting you. Not the most dramatic one, not the worst one, just a recent one. Now ask yourself these questions. Before that conversation, what did I believe to be true? During that conversation, what was I told was true? After that conversation, what did I feel pressured to believe? So you got before, during, and after the conversation. Before, what did you believe was true? During, what were you told was true? And after, what did you feel pressured to believe? Then ask yourself this question. Did I leave that conversation feeling understood or managed? And the wording does make a difference because gaslighting is not about connection at all. It's about management. They're managing your emotions, your questions, your memory. They're managing the whole story. And as a result, they are also able to control the consequences. And if someone seems more committed to controlling the narrative than understanding your hurt, pay attention. I recently talked to my gaslighter. We still talk every once in a while, co-parenting, shared children, all that. And I had asked him a very direct question. There had been a story out in the news recently about the Rape Academy, and it hit me very hard. And I went to him and I said, I need to know if you engaged in any activities like this. And I need to know the absolute truth, because if I find out later, this could literally destroy me. If I find out right now, while I am prepared, I will be able to handle it. So I gave him the out. I gave him the chance to come clean. I walked into that conversation knowing what I wanted to say. During the conversation, I was told, oh, you're overreacting. I would never do things like that. How could you even think that? Okay, yeah, I've done bad things, but not that. How could you not believe? And then when I walked away from the conversation, I was feeling pressured to not talk about it. And oh, he does this so good to me. He'll just say, I promised you I would never talk badly about you. Not to our kids, not to our friends, no one. I will never say anything bad about you. So what does that make me feel? It makes me feel like I'm supposed to reciprocate. Well, of course, I'm not going to say anything bad about you either. But the difference is, he has done something horribly wrong. I have not. And if he wants to call me out on anything bad that I've done, go for it. But there's no reason for me to sit here and say, oh, I won't tell anybody. There's no reason to tell anybody. That is, again, being controlled. That is him managing my behavior. Let's talk about the difference between normal conflict and gaslighting, because this is where so many of us get stuck. In a healthy conflict, two people may disagree, but reality is still allowed to exist. A healthy person might say, I remember it differently. They can say, I can see why that upset you. They can say, that wasn't my intent, but I understand how you felt that. Or, I forgot and I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, this one you'll never hear. You're right, I did say that. This is healthy conflict. And conflict is going to exist because no two people are the same. But with all of those things that I just said, do you know what is still intact? Your humanity, your memory, your emotional reality. Healthy conflict can be messy and it's definitely not perfect, but it doesn't require you to disappear. Gaslighting, on the other hand, often turns the focus away from the actual issue and onto your supposed flaws. Okay, so here is your next reflection. Think about a conversation that left you spinning. Now ask, what was the original issue I brought up? Maybe it was, did you lie to me? Did you cross a boundary? You embarrassed me. You scared me. You ignored what I asked. You broke my trust. You flirted with someone right in front of me. You spent money that we didn't have. Or you denied something I know did happen. Write that issue down in one sentence. Now ask, how long did it take for that conversation to stop being about that? I'm guessing it was really fast. The first time I confronted my gaslighter with some of the major lies he had been telling, we got off that topic so fast, and the issue was turned around. He became the victim, and it was all my issues. It was my memory, my timing, my stress, my sensitivity, my past, my hormones, my neediness, my failure to communicate correctly. It stole the spotlight from the actual behavior and put it on my reaction. And then I was too busy defending my reaction that the original problem never did get addressed. And that is not an accident. That is a cornerstone of gaslighting. Now I want to talk about our bodies for a minute. When you are being gaslit, your body can sometimes tell the truth before your mind is ready to. Gaslighting often lives in the gap between what you know and what you are being told, and that gap creates stress. You may notice your chest tighten up, your stomach drop, your heart races, you might have a headache, brain fog. You might just feel numb, frozen, exhausted. I still remember very clearly apologizing when I was diagnosed with a sexually transmitted disease when I was pregnant with our third child. My doctor had very, very plainly asked me, have you had sex outside your marriage? I said no. She said, then he has. End of story. It was one of those ones that there was no way around it. And yet I walked away from our conversation apologizing, because how could I accuse him of something? This is when I have been told one of us has cheated. And I know with absolute, complete, 100% certainty, it was not me. There was no other way around it. But I walked away feeling like I had gotten things wrong. I was just a mess. And I don't know. It's just like you have to go to court for your own reality. But if you think about it, people who are acting in good faith do not usually require a mountain of evidence for every bruise they leave on your mind. If my husband came to me and said, are you cheating on me because I have an STD? I would not say, how dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would say no. Why? Why do you think this? Let's talk about this. I would not shut him down. But that's exactly what he did. He shut me down, turned it around. He became the victim. So this is hard. This is hard stuff. And sometimes that can be difficult, kind of reliving it. So let's take a moment and just ground. Look around your room. Name 3 things that you can see. Maybe it's a light. Maybe it's a window. Maybe it's your friend. Now, notice 2 things that you can physically feel. Maybe you're feeling the shirt on your shoulders or the shoes on your feet. Maybe you're feeling the stability of the chair you're sitting in. Now take one slow breath and say to yourself, confusion is information. My body is allowed to notice what my mind is still sorting out. Because our bodies know. They do. So you think you might have been gaslit, but how do you know? How do you know for sure? Because gaslighters are really good about flipping the script. One thing, kind of what I was just discussing, is just flat denial. When they say that never happened, but you know that it did. It's not just poor memory. They're trying to rewrite the story. Rewriting history. That's not what I said. That's not what I did. You always change the story. If you are positive in your reality, stick with it. Another thing they're going to do is minimize. It was not a big deal. You're making this into something it isn't. It was just a joke. Another thing they're going to do is mock you. Here we go again. You're so dramatic. Oh no, you always cry. You're just impossible. I always say, never believe the nevers and the always. If somebody is telling you always or nevers, that is not realistic. Another thing they're going to do is show false concern. This one I definitely have experience with. He told me he was concerned about me, that I was making a big mistake by wanting a divorce because I was perimenopausal. And he was just so sad that one day I was going to wake up and really regret this and wanted me to take some more time to think about it. So, it had nothing to do with his lies, his manipulation, his cheating, the bad things he had done to me. It was because of my hormones. Because, I'm just a woman. I get carried away with my feelings. And he framed it like false concern. He framed it with, I'm worried about you. You've been so emotional lately. You've gone through a lot. This one is especially cruel because it comes dressed up like care. And it's really not. They're still just trying to control the situation. Another thing they do is weaponize confusion. So remember, confusion is not your failure. Confusion is a state. They put you in the state on purpose. They talk in circles. They change the subject. They pull in irrelevant details. They nitpick your wording, and they keep you so busy on the little side roads that the main point disappears. So how could I accuse him of cheating on me when I was pregnant with our child? Well, guess what? He did cheat on me. So I should not have listened to that. I should not have accepted that. I should not have felt bad for giving this accusation when I actually had all the facts. I was just not able to see it yet. And along with that is, oh gosh, the imaginary backup people. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. All my friends say, everyone else thinks, no one else would react like you. Anyone else would say you're overreacting. Most girls like, again, I always say never believe the nevers and the always. Anything with imaginary backup, they're just trying to isolate you. It creates the feeling that reality itself is voting against you. So, which one of these things do you think is showing up for you the most? Think about your conversations with your gaslighter. Which of these moves do you hear most often? Is it denial? Is it minimizing, mocking, false concern, rewriting history, bringing in everyone else, walking in circles? Just pick one or two and then ask yourself, what effect does that move have on me? For me, I doubt myself and I will apologize and I will back down. And then I forget the original point to begin with, and I'll feel guilty for even speaking at all. That effect matters because gaslighting is not only about what they said, it's what they're training me to do. It is training me to disbelieve myself. distrust myself. And this is why one of the reasons gaslighting can be so hard to name while you're living in it, because over time you adapt, you start softening everything. I remember talking to my mom about my gaslighter, and I remember saying, well, he just feels better knowing he's like the smartest one in the room. And she said, that's not okay, because you're smart and I'm smart. Everyone gets a chance to be the smartest one in the room. And if you're bowing down to that, you're giving him that power. Don't soften everything. Don't make excuses for them. Don't say, maybe I'm wrong, but you don't need to. You don't need to preface your truth with softer words. Another thing I know I do is I gather proof before speaking. I feel like I can't come out and say anything without having a whole script written and like rehearsing it and editing my feelings into more acceptable shapes. I start bracing for the pushback before I even start talking. I apologize before I have even made my point. I started to assume that unless I could explain my hurt in flawless courtroom ready language, it was going to be dismissed. And that is not being weak. That is being conditioned. And I really want survivors to hear this, because so many of us judge ourselves for how confused we became. And, that confusion is often the result of being trained to live in contradiction. You see what you see, but they say you did not. You feel what you feel, and they say you should not. You remember what happened, and they say you do not. And this wears a person down. A clear example of this and how I was able to see it showed up when he was coming out to visit me, and he wanted to stay with me. This is post-divorce. And I said, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. He said, look, I'll sleep on the floor in our son's room. You can lock your bedroom door. It'll be fine. And I said, no. I did not say, let me think about it, or maybe. I said no. So then the time comes, he doesn't have a hotel room. He said, you told me that I could stay with you. And I said, no, I did not. And he said, you did. And then he brought out his little details. He said, you said I could sleep on the floor in our son's room and you would just lock your bedroom door. Like giving those details somehow made his point more valid. And I said, no, I did not ever say that. And he said, yes, you did. And I said, no. Do you know how I know for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that I did not say that? It's because my bedroom door doesn't have a lock on it. And I am perfectly well aware of that. So why would I have said that? And he got all blustery and he goes, well, that's what I thought. I said, no, those are the words you said. Those are the words you tried to put in. You tried to get me to say those words. And it didn't work this time. But it took me a lot of years to get to that point. Because it wears a person down. Gaslighting is harsh. So here is a reality test you can use. Think about this. When you bring up hurt, does the other person become curious or controlling? Curious sounds like, tell me more, or I want to understand, or I didn't realize it landed that way. I can see why that upset you. Or even just, let me think about that for a minute. That's curious. Controlling sounds like, no, that's not what happened. You always do this. You need to calm down. You're always twisting everything. That's your issue. Remember the nevers and the always. Notice the difference. If you're being curious, it invites truth. It invites conversation. The other one is just protecting power, controlling you, trying to control your reaction. Think of that person in your life, and when you tell them that you're hurt, do they get more curious or controlling? And when they get uncomfortable, Do they move to repair the situation or shut you down? What was the first honest answer that comes to your mind? Not the answer that you wish was true, not the answer that gives them the benefit of the doubt, just the honest answer. Because sometimes your first honest answer is the one your nervous system has known for a long time, and your brain is just trying to catch up. Gaslighting works scarily effective on thoughtful people, empathetic people, people who reflect, people who care about being fair, people who are willing to look at themselves and ask, maybe could I be the one that's wrong? That's one reason why so many caring, conscientious people get pulled into it, because a manipulative person can take your humility and your humanity and use it against you. Your willingness to self-reflect becomes their hiding place. You think, maybe I misunderstand, and they're thinking, yes. You think, oh, I don't want to be unfair, and they're thinking, great, now I can keep moving the goalposts. You think, okay, I just need to explain myself better, and they're thinking, great, we're no longer discussing what I did. That's why being reflective is beautiful, but it also needs boundaries. Self-reflection is healthy, yes. Self-erasure is not. Don't erase yourself. All right, going back to your gaslighter, let's think. Do you get invited to reflect, or are you pressured to erase yourself? When this person challenges you, do you come away with a greater wisdom, or do you trust yourself less? Let me say that a different way. Greater wisdom or less trust in myself? Because healthy relationships can challenge us. They can reveal blind spots. They can help us grow, but they don't demand that growth through humiliation or destabilization or through mental fog. If every hard conversation ends with you feeling less solid in your own mind, something is off. Now I want to slow this down and do a journaling exercise with you. You can write this down later if you're driving or walking, but I want you to hear the prompts now. Start with this sentence. What I know is, and I want you to finish it 5 times. What I know is, I felt sad. What I know is, I asked clearly. What I know is that a promise was made. What I know is, I left the conversation feeling ashamed of myself. What I know is I kept doubting myself afterward. Do not start with things that you can prove. I'm not asking for evidence. Start with what you know. That is an important difference, because if you've been gaslit, you've been trained to believe that the only way to get to truth is to have it externally verified, usually by your gaslighter. I want you to know your internal reality matters too. If a conversation consistently leaves you disoriented, that matters. If a person repeatedly denies your experiences, or if your mind feels like it's constantly being twisted into knots, that matters. Okay, so what I know is, write that down 5 times. Now add a second prompt. What I keep being told is. And now I want you to write this down for 5 times too. What I keep being told is I am too sensitive. What I keep being told is I remember wrong. What I keep being told is I make a big deal out of everything. What I keep being told is I'm over-emotional. What I keep being told is none of this happened the way I think it did. Now, let's compare the 2 lists. Not to decide who is perfect, not to produce a legal argument, but just to notice the tension. Sometimes seeing the 2 lists side by side is very eye-opening. One of the cruelest parts of gaslighting is that it can make perfectly reasonable pain sound irrational, even to you, the person who's feeling it. You start talking in hesitant little question marks. Maybe, I don't know. This might sound dumb. I could be wrong. I probably shouldn't even bring this up. Talking with those little question marks, it doesn't invalidate you. It doesn't mean your concern is weak. Sometimes it means that your concern has just survived repeated attacks. So sometimes you do have a shaky voice. Sometimes you don't seem certain. Sometimes your voice sounds like it's the one of someone who has learned that truth comes with consequences, and that deserves compassion. And trust me, your gaslighter's not going to give it to you. You have to give yourself compassion. All right, let's clear up a couple things really quick. What gaslighting is not. Gaslighting is not someone forgetting a detail once or in a while. Gaslighting is not one bad argument. Gaslighting is not your partner disagreeing with your interpretation or saying, well, that wasn't my intent, you got it wrong. Gaslighting is an ongoing pattern. The pattern is of distorting reality. It's dismissing your internal experience, and it's completely avoiding accountability. That pattern matters. The impact matters. The repetition matters. And the power imbalance matters. When does abuse happen? When there is a power imbalance. Gaslighting is emotional abuse. Somebody has all the power. Somebody is getting to tell you, no, you don't remember it right. That is imbalance. So here is a pretty easy exercise. Ask yourself, is this rare or does this happen a lot? Do you feel confused once in a while or all the time? Do you avoid having hard conversations, or do you feel like you have the ability to approach your partner at any time to have a conversation? Really, is this a misunderstanding or is it a system? And that's the big one. Is this a misunderstanding or is this a pattern, a system of patterns? Because many survivors are not dealing with random emotional accidents. They're dealing with a relational system that keeps one person in charge of what is real. One of my biggest issues with gaslighting involved financial abuse, and it stemmed from an incident that occurred early on in our relationship. And there was an incident that he claims I overreacted in, and he would bring it up over and over and over. And it just became part of a reality that wasn't true. It was, you don't do well with finances. It stresses you out. It makes you emotional. You don't do well with discussing finances. He used that as a crutch so he could create his own reality. There was a time that I won't even say overreacted. I reacted to a financial stress. And I'll even tell you what it is again really quick. I've talked about it many times before, but I was in the grocery store with my 2-year-old and a newborn baby, and my credit card was declined. I was trying to buy diapers. I was trying to buy food for my toddler. I was trying to be a good mom, and my credit card was declined. I had to bring that up in therapy for a therapist to say, no, hold on. That is a moment worthy of freaking out. Why should you have been calm? Why would you just be like, oh, well, I'm obviously not good with finances? You know, that is something that my gaslighter turned around on me, and it caused so many problems down the line. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He was creating a system. He was creating a pattern that made me doubt myself. Okay, this is probably my most favorite prompt to think of. If I could say it plainly without fear of being dismissed, what would I say? If you could just have a safe space where you weren't going to be mocked or accused or laughed at, what would you say? Maybe I would say, you keep denying things that have really happened. You make me question my memories. You change the subject when I bring up things that have hurt me. You make me feel like my feelings are evidence against me. You always make the conversation about my tone instead of your behavior. I leave conversations with you feeling like I'm crazy, like I'm constantly trying to prove reality. I don't feel safe when I'm with you. That plain sentence is so powerful. Even if you never get to say it to them, even if it's just for you, actually, especially if it's just for you. Find that sentence. What would you say? Say it out loud. Let's do one together right now, okay? If you have experienced gaslighting, I want you to say this after me. Say, my confusion is not my failure. Say that. My confusion is not my failure. Say, my confusion deserves attention. My confusion deserves attention. Now say, my memory matters. Because it really does. My memory matters. Being repeatedly dismissed is a real experience, and I do not have to earn the right to trust myself. You are a survivor. You need to hear yourself say something true, and those things are all true. Why do we all miss this? A lot of people miss gaslighting at first because it rarely starts with, neon signs and dramatic music. It just starts small. A denial here, a joke there, a little minimizing, especially, women, we're hormonal, we're not rational. Over time, those small things stack up. And you're not reacting to just one sentence anymore. You're reacting to the weight of 1,000 tiny cuts. And from the outside, people may only see your reaction. They don't always see the buildup. But your nervous system does. Your body does. Your exhaustion does. Your hesitation does. Let's talk about the stacking effect. Think of one phrase this person has told you over and over again. Just one. For me, it would definitely be, you freak out over finances. Now, ask yourself, how many times have you heard some version of this? It's not going to be exactly that same sentence, but that same message. Has it been repeated over and over to you? For me, definitely. It was a key component for enabling the financial abuse because it made me quiet. It made me anxious. It made me feel stupid. It made me feel like I had to apologize. And it made me dependent on him because he didn't stress out about finances. That repetition is part of the injury. He told that to me so many times, I believed it. And now that I am on my own, I do not stress about finances nearly the same way because I know I actually have a handle on it. What we need is clarity. And sometimes people think clarity has to be super dramatic, but it can be super simple. It can just sound like, I know how I felt. I know what I heard. I know that I'm constantly being told the wrong thing. And I know something's wrong, even if I don't have the perfect label yet. Remember, you don't need to be presenting evidence in a courtroom to honor what you are noticing. You don't need unanimous approval. You don't need anyone else to say yes. Because, your gaslighter's never going to give you that approval. You just need to accept that your confusion is coming from the person who wants you confused. So what is our goal here? Our goal is not to turn every conflict into a diagnosis. Our goal is not to panic or over-label. Your goal is not to prove the other person wrong. It's not to even say, hey, you're gaslighting me, stop. These are all great tools, but that's not the goal. The goal is discernment, to notice patterns, to honor the impact, to trust what repeated confusion may be trying to tell you. And when you have that discernment, you're going to say, I am paying attention. I am noticing things. And I am no longer automatically assuming the problem is me. I am allowed to ask questions, better questions. And one of the best questions is, what happens to me around this person over time? Not just in one moment, not just in one beautiful apology that you've been waiting to hear, not just in one good frame, but over time. Does this person make you feel more grounded, more free, more honest? I doubt it. If you feel more hesitant, if you feel more self-doubt, if you're feeling more foggy over time, this is telling you a truth. And I want to end with a reclaiming exercise. You can write it down later, but let's just talk it through right now. We're going to finish these sentences. Number 1, something I keep noticing is. I would say, something I keep noticing is, I don't feel validated. Number 2, a pattern I can no longer ignore is. Mine would be, a pattern I can no longer ignore is, I am told that I am stupid with finances. Number 3, what I feel in my body after these conversations is, oh my goodness, I feel in my body just a ball of tension. I feel like everything, my shoulders, my chest, my stomach, I just feel like I'm just a knot. That's not the way you should be when you're talking to a person who cares about you. Number 4, what have I been told about myself? Yeah, I was told that basically I was stupid and unreliable and was unable to discern the truth. Number 5, what am I beginning to believe instead? I would say now that I am beginning to believe my inner voice, that my thoughts and feelings are okay. They're allowed. They even have some power. And number 6, one truth I want to hold on to is, and for me, that would be one truth I want to hold on to is, my thoughts are valid. Even if I'm not even delving into the financial abuse part of it, my thoughts, my feelings are valid. And even if someone does not validate my reality, I can. I can validate it myself. I can still honor what I am experiencing. And that sentence is a ruby slipper sentence. That is a click your heels together kind of sentence. Because gaslighting tries to separate you from yourself. Healing brings you back home. So how do you know this is gaslighting? You know because the pattern keeps bending reality in one direction. You know because valid concerns keep getting turned into character flaws. Your every path somehow leads back to you apologizing for what they did. You know it's gaslighting when you feel more confused after talking. Because your memory, your emotions, your instincts are constantly put on trial. And you know deep down, beneath all the noise, something in you keeps whispering, this isn't right. Wherever this episode finds you, I hope it reminds you that confusion is not your identity, and it's certainly not your failure. It's a state that you have been put into. It may be something that you're living inside of, but it's not who you are. And you're allowed to notice and question and trust yourself again, little by little. Thanks for joining me today. The next few weeks, I'm going to be focusing a lot on gaslighting. Next week, I'm going to be talking about gaslighting and online dating, and that goes along with catfishing. I will have some new articles on the blog, and I will have some new videos on YouTube, and I just hope that you guys will give me a like or a share or a follow and just become part of my Ruby Slippers family. Until next time, just remember there's no place like home, and home is where you get to believe your own truth.